Australia remains on high alert by the threat of China with a new focus on rising tensions in the South China Sea. Just recently, Australia declared there is no legal basis for China's territorial claims to most of the region. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump is giving the Chinese app TikTok 45 days to negotiate its sale to Microsoft amid concerns of national security issues. Joining me now, retired Major General and New South Wales Liberal Senator Jim Molan. Senator Molan, always great to have you on the show. We know there's rising tensions between the United States and China. How close are we to that very scary scenario where one of them blinks?
Peter, I think that's the issue. It's a sad day when, to get away from talking about COVID, we find ourselves talking about conflict in the South China Sea. But I was reading a series of non-government intelligence assessments of the situation up there, which really can be summarised as saying that the probability of conflict in the South China Sea has moved from possible to likely, and some would say highly likely. We've got a situation where both sides, the US and China, on a daily basis practice fighting each other. We have a political situation in the US, we have high rhetoric in China, and we have China in various forms of conflict, from Hong Kong to Taiwan to Vietnam, with 8 separate countries who either are in the South China Sea, border the South China Sea, or like us, send our trade continually through the South China Sea. And all of this comes together just to back up the fact that we are in conflict. We've got to be very, very careful.
Jim, this all seems to have sort of escalated, exacerbated, if you like, since coronavirus, because the world condemned the way in which this was originated out of China. And of course, the Chinese became very, very defensive. They accused Australia of misinformation, and of course there were trade sanctions. So the volatility, if you like, has sort of come off the back of us accusing, or not so much accusing, but wanting to get to the bottom of what happened with this Wuhan virus.
I think that's definitely a factor, and I think it's a good way to, the way you've looked at it is that whatever was happening before in the trends of assertiveness of China, particularly in the South China Sea, but not only there, against India, Japan, Vietnam and many other nations, that whatever existed before we went into this, Peter, is going to be exacerbated by the fact that the strategic change in power balance in our region, plus the health impact, which makes people angry and upset, plus, of course, the cost, the economic cost to everything has changed the strategic balance of power. China's rise was always going to change that. But when we pour on top of that the COVID impact, and China has been appalling over COVID, it's fought the inquiry into COVID all the way. It finally agreed with 100 or so nations who want an inquiry, and now it's postponed that. What it's done in Hong Kong is just appalling. Yes, there is a small, you could assume there is a small amount in the rhetoric, at least out of the US, which comes from where the US is in its political cycle. But, there is no interest in this outside to try and show to China that the nations in the region are unified, therefore don't do anything silly.
Jim, I had to break the news last week to my little bloke that Trump was thinking of banning TikTok in America, and he was very concerned that Morrison would go down the same path. Why are they so concerned about TikTok? Is it some sort of Chinese spying tool, is it?
Peter, the allegations have certainly been made that it is, that it's not a social media app, that it is an information collection mechanism. Now, that's a very strong allegation, and it's been made by a number of people who claim to have reverse engineered TikTok. It's certainly fairly sure that this collects more information than does every other form of social media that we commonly use: Facebook, Google, Instagram, etc. And it's also owned by a Chinese company which is subject to the Chinese National Intelligence Act, which requires that if the Chinese Communist Party want it, if it want the information which TikTok collects, if the Chinese government wants it, the Chinese government gets it. And of course, we're conducting an inquiry into foreign interference through social media at the moment, and we've invited TikTok to appear before us on the 21st of this month, and they're going to do that. And we will have the other social media, the bigger social media, appearing before us probably in September, at a date to be fixed in September. But I would advise everyone to be extraordinarily careful of this, for the simple fact, Peter, that the level of trust that I'm afraid that we can put in China at the moment is very, very low. And therein lies the problem. We cannot trust how they will use the information, the extraordinary information that they seem to be collecting through TikTok.
Indeed. Jim Boland, great to see you tonight. Thanks for joining us on Sky News Across Australia.
Thanks, Peter.